President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelenskyy announced today that the strikes will scale on the territory of the Russian Federation against all legitimate military targets. It seems even the Kremlin's political elite are too preoccupied with their own concerns to cover up what's happening in the Kursk region.
Well, of course, as some sources say, sane people, as well as surprisingly sane people in Putin's entourage, various officials also remain. And they actively began to say that that's it, the king no longer catches mice. So, you need to look for some way out. And some groups of conspirators are already maturing. And I don't know what they will come to. But, as they say, by September these groups can come up with something and decide something. Therefore, of course, the blow that was struck in the Kursk region is a blow to the gut of Putin's dictatorship, I would say so.
And Putin, meanwhile, gave the task to resolve, as he calls it, the situation in the Kursk region by October 1st, but, apparently, he will not have time. Olga, by October, will these groups that could make decisions by September emerge in the political sphere, among security forces, or oligarchs? Or will it be a mix of those who realize that aligning with Putin is the only viable option?
I think that if they want to achieve success, then it must be a symbiosis, because it is difficult to carry out military actions without the security forces. It is also not very easy to do all this without money, and without some officials, it is also impossible to figure out how to optimally organize all this business. So I think that if we talk about something successful, it should definitely be a symbiosis. But it is clear that the Russian elites today are so cowardly that they may not do anything. But in any case, such conversations are already underway, and this is already a lot.
And can it be done not by the elites, but, for example, by the security forces or, possibly, by the disgruntled military who do not understand where they are, here and there, then to the Kharkiv region, then not, let's leave the Kharkiv region, return to the Kursk region, return in insufficient volume. 2 weeks have passed, have the Russians managed to build the first line of defense near Kurchatov?
Well, unfortunately, probably for the regime, fortunately, it is no coincidence that they imprison all the generals, so there is simply no one among the military elite to raise this very mutiny. Again, it is not surprising that exactly a year ago Yevgeny Prigozhin tried to raise such a mutiny. Not the military elite, but part of the military elite tried to join him, this very Prigozhin, because even then, a year ago, they understood that everything was going badly and it was necessary to end all this, and do something. But they themselves are simply impotent today. There are no public politicians in Russia, so the groups, they are so strange, they have forgotten how to act abruptly. Some revolutionary events took place a very long time ago, and this understanding of how to solve the issue, it has been largely lost, and they go, so by touch. I'm not even talking about the fact that Putin, of course, himself is also afraid and very often changes his guards. Everyone is afraid that the guard will come, he will be hit on the head.
And Prigozhin not as a subject, but Prigozhin as a phenomenon that can be motivated by other facts of what is happening in Russia, can arise as unexpectedly as this one.
Of course, if someone had been watching Prigozhin closely, he would have understood that he did not appear so unexpectedly. This is the understanding that they are trying to use him to overwhelm the bodies of his recruiters with what is not undertaken. They are trying to solve an unsolvable problem with his help, and at the same time they throw him some immeasurable money. But you can't solve the problem with money. It is no coincidence that they always shouted, "Gerasimov, where are the shells?" And there are no shells. He had to throw living people at it all, who quickly became dead. But nevertheless, of course, Prigozhin was such a serious phenomenon, and what he guaranteed to his mercenaries. Of course, he did, unlike today's generals, who not only do not guarantee anything and will not fulfill anything, but who are ready to throw conscripts into the furnace. And they do not care at all what will happen and what the parents of those very conscripts think. And in general, the fact that conscripts do not know how to fight, they don't care about it either.
Today there was an exchange of 115 for 115 Ukrainian servicemen. Thank God and thank you to all those involved in this exchange, and to our diplomatic, political and military leadership, the United Arab Emirates, all those who made efforts for this possible exchange, and, of course, to our defense forces, which are replenishing the exchange fund at a rapid pace after the operation in the Kursk region. And, Olga, the Russian media write that just since 2009, like this, there are conscripts on these lists from the Russian side. At least this information requires verification, but still the Russian media write. And one of the Russian human rights organizations says that it is as if numerous video appeals, statements, posts on social networks, written appeals from the parents and relatives of these conscripts put pressure on the Kremlin authorities. But for some reason, it seems to me that the Kursk NWO and the United Arab Emirates and Ukraine put pressure on the Kremlin authorities. But in fact, is the Kremlin government deaf or not to the appeals of the relatives of conscripts, as are mobilized at one time?
Of course, she is absolutely deaf to appeals, but there are other facts. There is a drop in Putin's rating for the first time in a long time, and it is due in part, of course, to the fact that the armed forces of Ukraine occupy one strong point after another in the Kursk region, but on the other hand, there are conscripts there. Of course, the fact that conscripts are forced to fight there, despite all Putin's numerous promises that there will be no conscripts in any war zone. This affects not only their relatives, but also society as a whole, because everyone understands that the same Wagner mercenaries are not only Wagner mercenaries, they fight for money, and conscripts are killed for free. And this is a painful topic that really collapses Putin's rating. And they exchanged them precisely because of this in order to silence their relatives. And so that they no longer shout and do not drop Putin's rating.
Yes, that is, these are, apparently, the kind of mobilization that the Kremlin now needs to be afraid of?
Of course, because mobilization. There were three factors that lowered Putin's rating. The first factor is mobilization. The second time was Prigozhin's mutiny. The third time was in the Kursk region. Here are three cases of a sharp drop in Putin's rating. And, paradoxically, the dictator depends on public opinion. It would seem that there is no public opinion in Russia. But when this public opinion begins to change dramatically, the dictator reacts to it. This is such a paradox.
And even the state-owned All-Russian Center for Public Opinion Research speaks about these three cases of a drop in Putin's rating and rating of trust and approval. We also talk about public opinion in Russia on the air, but nevertheless, Putin's approval rating fell by 3.5% points and reached 73.6%. The level of trust decreased by 2.6 points, amounting to 78.2%. And this is just happening against the backdrop of the beginning of the Kursk NWO from August 12 to 18. These ratings have decreased at the mark 1 announced. How indicative and why is it that even the state All-Russian Center conducts such a study and announces such results, which are not very pleasant for the dictator?
Well, apparently, those who supervise the activities of this center in the presidential administration also believe that Putin needs to react to this somehow and somehow move him to the right decisions. And this is where it arises. Well, it can even be registered in the DO. It is clear that we absolutely do not trust the numbers. But this difference, the dynamics, the fact that the numbers show a drop in the rating, this can be trusted. Neither the depth of the fall, nor the numbers of today or yesterday can be trusted, but the fact that the rating is falling is an absolute fact.
so that he does not fall and does not drop Putin's stats of his rating, although this, of course, plays into our hands, because it is clear that those 70 completed are also all that remain, what decision he should make and whether he has won at all on Kursk. Because even the Western media, the Wall Street Journal, analyzing his trips this week, and not the emergency measures in the Kursk region, the name of which he reads from the leaflet, says that Putin has taken up the tactic of downplaying the situation, as he calls it, and pretends that nothing is happening. But will it help?
As they sang in the old Soviet film about Hagen Sredin, in Agdal, everything is calm, calm, calm. This is about how Putin behaves. At the same time, of course, let's remember, and we must not forget about this, and we will always talk about it, that it was the first time he came to Beslan, and like the crocodile that does not know how to cry, but drops these tears, in the same way Putin knelt before the memory of those children whom he personally ordered to burn alive with a rocket flamethrower, Bumblebee. This has all been proven. There was a special commission of the State Duma in those vegetarian times, which was headed by Yuri Savelyev, a former rector of the military mechanics department, such an institute, of course, a military institute in St. Petersburg. He is just a specialist in various types of weapons, and he calculated everything to the figure. Why couldn't it be the bombs that the official authorities were talking about, blown up as if by terrorists, in the hall? And why? This was the result of shelling from Bumblebee rocket flamethrowers. And it was Putin who gave the order to burn these children, and now he comes and kneels. So it was not necessary to burn children, just so that we remember that this person is not a person in our understanding. He does not feel sorry for anyone, neither children, nor women, nor the elderly. He is ready to kill everyone for the sake of his wishes. As he killed in Beslan, so he is killing now in Ukraine.